Hi guys, it's Kelly Taylor here, and I'm back with another video for Pink Fresh Studios. Today we are going to be making two cards. We're going to be making two cards using the same product, but one is going to be holiday and one is not. So I just wanted to show you how versatile the products are. So we're using the interlaced diamonds, the press plate and the die, the basic sentiments, stamp and die, thinking of you, stamp dies and stencil, joyful day, stamp dies and stencil, delicate foliage, the blanket stitch, I think it's a blanket stitch, could be the diagonal stitch, circles. I feel like I forgot something in there. The products are always linked below in the description. And so for both of these, we're going for more of like a softer no line look. And so because of that, I'm sometimes using the stamp and sometimes not. It's just Pink Fresh does a really good job of making sure that you can use them separate of each other, which I love. In this case, with the Joyful Day, this is like a leaf. It's all one piece, but it's a bunch of different leaves. So I picked out just some ink colors. I have the cubes, but you can use, whatever you want. I like the cubes because they already match. And so as I'm going through and doing the leaves, I'm able to kind of switch it up, but still stay in the same color family. So when I'm going down and putting in the color, maybe I'll do the lightest color and then the next darkest color. Or maybe I'll do the darkest color and the one right in front of it. And so it gives you an opportunity for a lot of color variation. I like a lot of color variation, especially since the idea that I had in my head for the holiday card was like a wreath. So I like having different leaves. I like having different colors in my leaves. So that's how I kind of chose the colors from there. Now here, because I want that no line look, I could stamp the stamp in one of the greens, but since I am also using it for a holiday card, I decided to heat emboss it in gold. So what you see me doing there was, after I inked it, I dried it. Now I tested it, and now I can go back in with the stamp and stamp it. You can do it in this order, or you can stamp it first and then stencil, which honestly is typically the route that I would normally take, but I wasn't sure exactly how I was going to use these just yet. So here I'm just going to stamp this down in a gold pigment ink. Those pigment inks are the best for embossing. If you don't have a gold pigment ink, a Versamark or a clear sticky ink would work just fine. Or you could skip the heat embossing. If you didn't want to do the heat embossing, you could just stamp this and then leave it to dry overnight, or dry it with your heat gun, because pigment inks do take a longer time to dry. That's one of the reasons why they're so good to emboss with. So here I do stamp my embossed images twice, and I'm able to do that because I use a stamp positioner, just full disclosure. And then I sprinkle on the gold, put the excess back in the bottle, and now I am heat setting this until it is smooth. So that is the first set of leaves, and then I'm going to put the coordinating die in place, and I'm going to set it aside because I have more ink blending to do before I get to my die cutting. The other one, the delicate foliage, I'm going to do the same thing, but I'm going to heat emboss it first. So this one is a little bit unique. In the stencil adds leaves that aren't in the stamp. So when you go to like die cut it, it cuts them all out. But if you just use the stamp, you could have a smaller arrangement, I guess is what I mean. So here, again, I'm stamping. I treat with my anti-static tool. I am stamping it twice. I'm going to sprinkle that gold embossing powder on, and then I will get into the ink blending. So for the first one, oh, I can't remember the name of the pack. I apologize. Link below. But it's like more of like a sagey kind of green family. And then for this one, I went more of kind of like a blue-green, a little bit brighter kind of family. And again, it's the same thing. Using the packs allows me to kind of pick and choose how dark or how light I want things to be. Or it gives me a full range. Let's say we're ink blending something that's much larger, gives you a full range from lightest to darkest in order to add lots of dimension, which I love. I don't ink blend this fast. I have sped this up. If you need it to slow down, you can use the little gear on the YouTube video. It's in the bottom right, and it will give you a choice of playback speed. So you can speed it up faster, or you can slow it down. I always recommend that you mute it before you do that, though, because in one case, I'm going to sound like the Peanuts teacher, and in the other case, I'm going to sound like one of the chipmunks. So once I had gone through and done the leaves, for these are obviously much smaller, but we're just trying to build up an interest by including different types of leaves and different shapes. Now, I know I'm making 2 cards, and I know that I'm going to need a lot of this flower from Thinking of You. So what I did was, this is a half sheet of paper, or cardstock. Half sheet of cardstock. So it is 5.5 by 8.5 by 5.5. And then what I'm doing is I'm letting the bottom part hang off because I know I don't need the stem or all those leaves. What I really need is the blooms. So I'm just fitting them in there however is going to give me the most. And this ended up giving me 6, and there's 3 in each one. I'm not going to do the math because math is not my strong suit, but it gives us a whole bunch of flowers, and that's all the math I need. It's all the math I need in my life. I am stamping this in a very light ink. This is, I think it's Cherry Blossom. It's a very light ink, and that I know will blend into the background once I start doing my ink blending. Now, I don't know if you guys have ever played in our challenge or not. Pink Fresh has a challenge, and you can win lots of good prizes. But if you have not, there's typically a theme, which I think this theme is Christmas, magical Christmas maybe, I'm not sure, or holiday. But then it always gives you a color combination, and you can do one or the other or both. And I love that because sometimes when I'm missing my mojo, I love a jumping off point. And I used to, a long time ago, before I had kids, and I had time. If you have children, you know exactly what I'm talking about. I used to play in a lot of challenges, and that allowed me to kind of get through any of those roadblocks, like creative roadblocks. So I really like that that's an option. So I actually did use the color prompt from the challenge for these 2 cards. And it's a beautiful combination. I love the way that the cards turned out. So, by the way, I just realized that my things are sitting right here. The green that I couldn't think of is, in fact, Green Gables. That's what the cube is called. But I'll link them and the individual colors below. So, here, when I first started, okay, I started with the lightest color and then kind of worked out to the darkest, like I would if I was coloring it. And I learned a valuable lesson, which was it kind of leaves them all feeling a little one note because there's not a lot of real estate here. If it was a larger blossom, I would be able to put 3 and 4 colors into it. My intention here is still to put 3 and 4 colors into it, but after this first one, I learned that I could do 1 or 2 colors on one layer and then 1 or 2 colors on the next layer, and that helped to break up the petals and to give me more dimension. So if you're going through and you're feeling like your stenciling is a little like one note, that it doesn't have a lot of dimension or separation of color, try switching it up to just using 1 or 2 colors per layer, and that may help you get better contrast and consequently better dimension. Because the first one that I did here, like, yes, it obviously has some dimension, but as I did more of them and played around more, I did learn that lesson. So for this one here, we are using the Chasing Sunsets ink cube pack. And so for the first one, I used the Sunkissed and the Mimosa. And then I'm going to move on. So this is like one layer. And this one, because I had done the other two, and I didn't even tell you. What was the other one? You saw me use Rose Garden, and then I used Heartbeat, which are kind of similar color palettes. And then this one, again, Chasing Sunsets. So once I figured out I wanted 2 of each because I had 6, then in between, you can see I'm cleaning off my stencil. It cut down on the cleaning quite a bit if I just did them both at the same time. So then, once I am like moving on to the next layer of stenciling, then I'm going to maybe the 2 mid-tone colors. So in this case, that would be Mimosa and Mango. And then Mango and Fruit Punch. It's Mango Sorbet. My apologies. But then that just shows you like how you can kind of mix it up. The other thing you could do is like feel free to mix your colors. So in this case, I mixed a little Mermaid Cove with a little Spruce Tips, and that gave me a different kind of green. I also, on this detail layer, which is, there's a detail layer for the flowers, and it also gives you like the line for the leaves. When I did that, I just did the darks so that I would have like that kind of really good pop of color. This is the detail layer that I was just mentioning. So this is my darkest one. This is my Fruit Punch. I'm going in there super, super dark with that color. And then for the bottom, I'm going in with the Lush Forest, which is a very dark green. Now, I will say, like before you go on to the next one, in this case, because we have 2 colors that we're doing at the same time, I would recommend cleaning your stencil in between so that way you're not picking up some of that green and carrying it into your next flower. So once they're all done ink blended, I'm going to go ahead and go through each time and die cut them using some low-tack tape. Here, this was a circle. We know our shapes. What did my daughter say the other day? She was trying to say rectangle. But what did she say? It was really, really cute. Reangle? I'm not sure. It was adorable. Anyway, I thought I was just going to use the circle frame. That's why I cut it out. The frame as a guide to hold my wreath, but I actually ended up using both pieces. So if you're crafting along, don't get rid of that. This is the interlaced diamonds press plate, and I'm using this for both the cards, but this is for the first background. And in this case, I am using, I think it's Waterfall, to do just a really, really subtle kind of blue in the background. This is for my non-holiday card. And I'm just going to go through and ink this up. Obviously, this is faster if you have the full-size ink pads. I don't. So I just make it work with what I have. They both work. This part just takes me a little bit longer. And I do kind of go over it for quite a while to make sure I'm good. I've put my paper in place, and now I've run it through, and there's that very subtle, very light, kind of like Tiffany blue. And then from there, I will use the die to cut that out. And that's going to be an extra layer for me on my non-holiday card. Here, I went through and I did trim these, even though they're like all together to use as one large piece. I did trim them apart so that I could use them to make my wreath, and on the other one make my bouquet. This is a really good way to kind of stretch what you have, to use them a little bit differently. You could also, if you wanted to do like more of a scene, where you had some grasses or a flower bed, you could cut them apart there. If you have like vases you wanted to use, you could cut them apart there. So here for this joyful day, I'm just looking and see where it makes the most sense to trim them. And so sometimes it gives me much larger pieces, and sometimes I can get away with much smaller pieces. Here, I wanted to show you, this is how I do my own kind of custom color that's going to match the card, because I'm using the same colors in the ink pads. So ignore that green one. I didn't love it, and we're not going to use it. But I needed to show you this part, because this part I did use for my sentiment, and then for the strips of paper on the side. So basically I just go in direct paper with my ink pad, and then I do pick up whatever's kind of left over on the glass mat with my brush, and then work that into the fibers as well. Here I'm putting some adhesive onto this frame piece. And as you can see, I've gold heat embossed my sentiment on that green paper that we inked. You remember what I said in the beginning. Remember back when we did that heat embossing? Like, you have to make sure it's dry if you've done the ink first. And in those particular ones, because it's an ink pad direct to paper, they do take a while to dry. So make sure you're double and triple checking before you do any heat embossing on those pieces. So here, I just wanted to give you a glimpse into what how I started building out the frame. So I thought, the best memories are made under the tree. I was like, that's cute. I'll put it at the bottom of my wreath. And obviously, if you saw the thumbnail, you know that that's not what I did at all. But I do like to include you guys, just take you along on the journey of my process, because I think a lot of times people feel like, well, I can't do that because, I'm not that creative, or I'm not that whatever. Like, we all go through the process of trying to get something just right. And sometimes it doesn't work out. So here, I'm kind of just holding it in place with my finger, and I'm using just a little bit of liquid glue to tack everything down together. I'm going to use my tweezers to kind of slide underneath there and help lift it up so that I can get my fine glue tip underneath it. But as you can see, as we're going, I am also being very careful to check that it's not being glued down to the background just yet. I had intentions of popping this up on foam tape, and more importantly, I ended up switching this background. So we don't want it to be glued down. If you love this background, if you're like, Kelly, this is it for me, I did this with the Green Gables, which is sage, eucalyptus, spruce tips, and lush forest. And I just did like a halo effect, leaving it lighter in the center. Here, I wanted to do the press plate. I wanted to add some gold heat embossing for the holiday card. It just feels fancier, it just feels like a little bit extra. But I was having a hard time getting my paper lined up the first time. So something else that you can do is kind of, do you remember old school when we used to put posters on our wall? Like, roll that tape and you can put it on the back. Full disclosure, because this works with pressure, you can get too much pressure on those areas with the tape. and it can kind of be a little bit too much. But I didn't really have any issues, nothing that bothered me. So I wanted to show you that you could ink this up with a Versamark if you're getting kind of color where you don't want it, or embossing where you don't want it. You just don't want to treat with your anti-static tool. And then I inked it up with a Versamark to show you, but then I also inked it up with that gold pigment ink. Those pigment inks you don't want to press very hard. You just want to be very light, tap, 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 so that you're not getting color where you don't want it. And then I removed it from there. I am, like I said before, heat embossing this. If you have a glimmer machine, you could also foil it, which would be another way to make it very fancy. Please know, if you do the route that I took today, which was heat embossing, it's not, you can't feel the letterpress. It's really just the design. It kind of becomes flush with the cardstock instead. So once I had that done, again, I'm heat setting it, and then I'm going to see if I like this better. My wreath is already kind of put together, so I can move it as one piece. So here's my wreath, and I am liking this better, but it's looking very squat. So I tried putting the white circle behind, and I did like that more. It kind of gave the eye a place to rest. But I didn't love the way it looked with the sentiment at the bottom. So I just went in with some of the pieces that I still had left over, filled in some leaves and some flowers at the bottom to, kind of, make sure there was a little pop of, pink or orange down there. And it's still feeling a little squatty to me. So I'm going to do, it's like a fashion rule as well. I'm going to do a little trick. If you add darkness to the outside, it's automatically going to make the inside look a little bit slimmer. So I did trim off the sides also, because this is our holiday card. I'm going to add more of that glitter paper. So some of you might be like, oh, I don't want to trim off the sides. If you want it to give the appearance of being a little bit slimmer, you have to. You have to trim off the sides, because it's meant to be a full A2 size card. So now I have a card base, and I'm going to go in with these green pieces that we were able to create with our, ink pad direct to paper. You can see I changed my sentiment over there. It says greetings this holiday season. I felt like this fit the wreath better. And then I'm just going to do kind of like the 2 lines of glue to get these darker pieces in place. And right away you can see how it thins out that middle. It does not look as squatty. It goes back to looking more like a traditional A2 size card. And you could totally leave it like this and not add the glitter strips. But I think that the glitter strips do bring a little bit extra kind of holiday magic to it. So we have the shiny, shimmery gold embossed background. We have this gold embossed, kind of a bolder sentiment that is going to catch our eye. We have the glitter paper on either side. So these are some things that are just extra that you can do to give it more of a holiday feel. And then I did add foam tape underneath my wreath. I know that parts of my wreath are going to overhang my gold strips or my green strips, and that's fine. Once I have that in place, I double check again, am I going to be happy with this sentiment? And yes, I do prefer the one that sits in the middle, so I'm going to go ahead and adhere that down flat. And then I'm going to set it aside to work on the non-holiday card. So that was my dog. I apologize. The non-holiday card does feel a bit more springy to me, just based on the colors that we used. So here, again, I like to show you guys kind of how it starts versus where we end up. Originally, I was looking at, tucking the flowers into that interlaced diamond and at a kind of a diagonal. I didn't end up loving it, and I will show it to you, and I will show you why. So here I'm going in, I'm adding the glue. I'm adding the glue mostly to the top and the bottom, because I want it to still be a little bit raised up where I can tuck my flowers in behind. And again, this one you can see that it does give the appearance of like being a little bit like of a thicker, like a shorter, a sturdy card, a thicker, shorter card, sturdy. But we're going to move the flowers. Like the goal is to put the flowers into an arrangement that guides the eye so that you are not concentrated on the background. This hello was that turquoise. The actual die cut was that turquoise ink on white. And then I did use, what was it? Was it Mermaid Cove? It might have been. To do some white heat embossing. So this one says, hello, dear friend. And here's what you're looking at. I kind of came at it from a diagonal. And once I add the sentiment, what ends up happening is it looks like a big old mess. It looks like it's not intentional at all, which is not good. That we want there to be some intention. So now I'm going back to the drawing board. I've scooted my sentiment down a little bit. I am trying to get a straighter line, a leaner line. And so this is like when we're talking about card design, I do want to have some visual triangles in there. I do want to have complementary colors that are working well, that have balance. And so what I ended up finding was doing it with the flowers up top facing up and the flowers on the bottom facing down. It did help to give me kind of that leaner line, that more intentional look that I was going for. I adhered down the dear friend, which is popped up on foam, and the hello. And nothing else is adhered down, like the flowers are not. Because this is going to give me the option to pick it up, again, just like I did before with the wreath, as one full piece. And this right here, what you're witnessing right here, is why I prefer liquid glue. Because now I have a little bit of wiggle room, a little bit of time to be able to redesign these because I bumped them, to make sure I'm happy with them. So now I can move the dear friend and everything on the bottom as one piece, and the hello and everything on the top as one piece. And then once I've taped my card down so it doesn't move while I'm trying to get this into place, just taped it to my glass mat, you can see up there in the corner. And then I am going to go ahead and adhere this. This one I did not pop up on foam because we do have quite a few layers. The sentiment is popped up on foam, but just the dear friend part. And then that will allow me to adhere the bottom layers. So this one definitely reads a spring to me. I love it. I think it's so fun. The blue is much lighter than the heavier gold that we see, in the holiday card. We've got some nice kind of bright sentiments. That works really well. So here is a recap of both cards. I did add the gold pearls to this one. And for the non-holiday card, I added the Ocean Breeze jewels. And then that is both cards. So I hope this inspires you to kind of play around with what you have to see if you can, maybe just make a holiday card out of it by changing a few elements, even if it's not a holiday set. So thank you guys so much for joining me. I always appreciate your time, and I will catch you on the next video. Bye.